Hello, listeners. I'm so excited to be joined today by Maxine. Hi, Maxine.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And I will tell you all that I just said to her, we're going to have fun today, but we are talking about burnout and resignations. Um, so I laughed at myself as I was saying it because I will say Maxine and I have a lot of fun when we chat. But these topics can seem really heavy. And for Maxine and myself, we discovered in our pre-chat that these are quite personal topics and that we've both experienced birth out. We've we've both experienced burnout, and resignations that felt or experience have been surrounded by resignations that felt like it didn't come from positive people and culture environments, let's say. So Maxine, I would love you to just jump on and introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am currently Director of Operations and HR at a firm called the Global Strategy Network. So we are a strategic communications firm. And I joined TGSN in February of this year, 2024. And so far, it's been fantastic. It's an entirely new industry to me. And I get to work with some really interesting, bright, driven people. Prior to this role, I was an operations manager for a women's health company, and most of my career has kind of been in operations and account management. I would really call myself an operations generalist, which is, I think, a positive thing. It's allowed me to get into tons of different topics, projects, problems, and industries. So personally, I think I've had a great career so far, and I've managed to learn tons from every business that I've been with. But I left my previous firm in January 2024. A combination of I'd hit this ceiling. I had been with the firm for a few years. I had been able to do tons of different things. I was involved in the creation of multiple teams. I got to be part of everything from recruitment all the way to new project launches, which was amazing. Product launches, excuse me. And the second thing was that I was effectively quite burnt out and I needed a change. So when you messaged me and reached out to me and said, let's chat, and we talked about a couple of different ideas, the fact that you mentioned burnout and kind of this concept of great resignations, I was like, absolutely, let's talk about this because it happens to so many people. And I think that we use the word burnout too casually sometimes when actually it's a really serious thing that we need to be really open about when we and talk about it and not kind of shy away. It's not like a taboo subject. It's really common. And yeah, I'm really excited to dive in.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, one of the things that strikes me still in my day job now as CEO of Time Hackers is the amount of people that I will speak to that will tell us, like, I'm on the edge of burnout, I'm on the verge of burnout. And I'm like, what are you waiting for? Like, what's the plan?
Mm,
So what can you speak to anyone who's experiencing or managing a team where they are seeing that happen? Because a lot of the feedback that we get from people is like, I can't pull back because I will let people down. And I mean, you and me have been on the other side, right? It's like,
yeah.
if you don't pull back, you'll still let them down. You'll just also make yourself sick. So what do you want people to be aware of around that last step before burnout, so to speak?
Yeah. I think that it's really important to acknowledge that burnout symptoms look different in different kinds of people. So, a great manager will obviously have really good interpersonal relationships with their team members and will recognize that one team member needs to be treated slightly different than the other because they're entirely different individuals. And I would also caution that it's often the people that are like the A star, like a team individuals that burn out because they make their jobs a huge part of their lives. And speaking personally, I derive a lot of my personal success from my job. I feel, I'm motivated by my job. I want to do the best I can do. And sometimes that means putting my personal health and happiness second. And so oftentimes people that burn out have this immense pressure that they've put on themselves. Actually, that's not coming from a manager, it's not coming from higher ups or their peers, it's coming in from an internal place. And so as a manager, you've got to be super kind of in tune with your team and kind of look out for behavior that's slightly different. And it doesn't have to be as obvious as people crying in the bathroom stall at work, right? It doesn't always present that way. But if you set a team member up with a piece of work you think they're going to be excited about, and like they roll their eyes or they don't seem as excited about it as you thought they would, that's a great indicator. If they're usually really stoked to get involved and suddenly you're like, hey, Vicky, I've got this huge idea, this great project, I'd love for you to run it. And they're like, okay, yeah, sounds good. What does that tell you, right? Like if someone's usually really on board to get stuck in and suddenly they're not, great indicator that they're struggling.
Yes. I love the word indicator as well. I think
Mm.
it's really valuable for people to be considering, like, what are those indicators? Like, I
Yeah.
think that difference to individuals, to teams, to organizations, when we're watching for the indicators versus the aftercators, if that's, I don't know,
Yeah, like
versus the after effects.
yes. Yeah, exactly. You really want to get ahead of burnout if you can. And getting over burnout doesn't just mean, taking 3 days off work, right? It's setting your team members up for success from day one, or as soon as, if it's not day one, as soon as you have an inkling of maybe my team might be juggling multiple plates right now, and maybe that's not sustainable for the next, 3, 6, 9 months. And it's all about having those really open, candid conversations, whether it's one-on-one, in a team setting. Personally, I found I've had more success with team members if I've done it in a more relaxed setting. So out for coffee, sitting on a patio, having lunch together, not in the office, and really making it open and just saying, I'd love to hear in your words, how are you finding the workload right now? Or like, how are you enjoying these different projects? What's going on? But developing those relationships takes a lot of time and it takes trust, right? So I've been at TGSN a few months now, but I'm still very, very new. And I recognize that when a new director of HR comes in, sometimes people are a little wary. They may not want to share with me right away. So you have to be really persistent, but patient at the same time about getting people to open up to you and share with you how they're feeling, whether it's about their team dynamic, their workload, the structure, their mission, the product that you're selling, whatever it is. It takes time. And that, I think, is part of what makes it good managers, is the patience and willingness to kind of be in that kind of ambiguous middle ground until your team is ready to step forward.
And also I'm hearing you really convey is like this human to human
Yes.
relationship, like this human sees this human.
Yeah.
What you're speaking about, getting outside of the office, going for lunch, going
Yeah.
for coffee, having conversations, the kind of questions that you suggested are very human based versus
Yeah.
productivity based or numbers based or crunch based. And I think that's also interesting for people listening to think about, like, how often are you creating space for the people around you to be seen as a human and heard as a human?
It's such a good point, and I think is also even more difficult now that a lot of us are in hybrid or remote environments. It's really difficult for me to gauge if an employee is struggling if I don't see them face to face very often, if I only see them once a week, kind of thing. That can be difficult, and it's also difficult for us to separate. One of the reasons I was so burnt out is because my previous role was almost entirely remote. And so I would get to my desk quite early and I would work all day and I would eat 3 meals a day at my desk. And so suddenly I would look at the clock and I would think, oh my gosh, it's 10 o'clock at night and I haven't moved. I haven't left the house all day. Yeah, I've been really productive, but actually I don't feel great for it. And then you go to bed and you haven't had that time to switch off, or I haven't had that time to kind of talk out a problem with a colleague. So I'm thinking about all the things I need to do the next day, and the cycle repeats. So I'm trying to, in my current role now, I'm having office hours twice a week where kind of it's very informal, but I guarantee that I'll be in the office a certain number of days a week and people can come chat to me. It doesn't have to be about anything serious. It can just be have a coffee, talk about the newest episode of Bridgerton. But I am trying to ensure that people have as much face time with me as possible, purely, for both their benefit and mine. I don't want to be blindsided by employees saying to me, of course I've been burnt out. How could you not notice? Right? That's a me problem. I need to make sure that I don't do that to my staff.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it's really great to have that perspective, because we've had a lot of champions of remote work, flexible work, on the podcast, and I think that it definitely has their advantages, and it's still something to be managed and trained. I think the issue is a lot of people are just changing policies without thinking about how do we support our employees through the change in policy. So if we are saying, work remote, not just saying, hey, work remote, but saying, hey, work remote, these are the challenges that you'll face. This is how we want to support you through it. This is the additional support you get because of it, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, those policy changes can definitely add to that pressure and that feeling of burnout, right? I mean, something that I'm constantly trying to advocate for is companies need to make rules that fit their people, not the other way around, right? So it's all about being realistic. 5 days a week from home might work great for the office next door, but it may not be great for your team. It's all about looking at what are the levels of experience that my team has, what kind of work are they doing, what are we selling, what's the end goal here. TGSN has a lot of really young, fantastic, eager staff, and I'm really, really keen to foster that talent and help shape the beginning of their careers. But I can't do that if they work remotely 24/7. And I also can't look out for those signs potentially of them overworking themselves at age 24. I did that. It was brutal. I don't want that for the next generation. So making rules to fit your staff, I think is a great way to kind of curtail the potential of burnout.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful sentence. And then that also lends onto the next thing that you and I spoke about, which is like what drives mass resignation. Because what we're seeing at organizations more and more is not, like the trend, the escalation of resignations is completely changed, where it's happening faster and for more people at once. It's like one person rips off the band-aid and people are like, while the door's open, let's escape. So why do you think we're seeing that happen? And what could organizations do?
Yeah, I think post-COVID, there has been this fear of great resignation, and people are saying this is unprecedented, this has never happened before. I would disagree with that a little bit. I think every generation has very similar problems, but by the time it happens to the next generation, you've forgotten about it. And I find myself even at my age going, kind of back in my day, and I hear myself, and I'm like, what am I talking about? I had the same problem. It was just, 10 years ago. There are definitely one thing I will give the youngest generation an amazing credit for is that they know what they want, and they're really clear about their boundaries. And I think that that's fantastic. A lot of them have this great idea, having experienced most of their university careers and working, from home, during COVID, that they know what they want out of a work environment, what they need out of a team. They've been taught to ask for those things, and I think that's great. It's not always realistic or feasible. Companies try their best, and sometimes, especially if you're small, medium enterprise, it's really difficult to cater to everyone's needs all the time. But I think that there is definitely a willingness to see what else is out there, as opposed to sticking around the same company for years and years, because the sense of loyalty is great and it's really important, but at the end of the day, if you're not progressing or enjoying your work, it's okay to move on. Somebody very close to me once said to me, I was lamenting about my job at the time, and she said, either you're earning or you're learning. And if you're not doing either one of those two things, it's okay to move on. And it's so simple, but I just thought, of course, that makes total sense. If my learning is off the charts, it doesn't matter if I'm not making tons of money or the benefits aren't as amazing as I want them to be, because I'm absorbing tons and tons of information. I have access to amazing people more senior than me, and I'm learning tons in every meeting I go into. And then if you switch to that, I'm now in a senior position, I'm the one that people go to, and I'm earning and I'm recognized for my contributions. That's also great. If you're in that middle realm, I'm not surprised that people choose to leave. Ties very closely into things like employee benefits and L&D. A lot of younger people really want to learn. There's this push for continuous learning, continuous development. And if firms don't provide them that, they'll leave. They'll go somewhere else that will offer them those opportunities.
Yes, and if you're listening and you want opportunities for L&D, then check out and get in touch with me.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that you and I also spoke about, which I think does tie into burnout and resignation, is actually the recruitment process. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts or any anecdotes you have around recruitment.
Yeah, I mean, recruitment is one of those things that people think it's really easy to do and anyone can do it. And it's often taken for granted. And then you're suddenly trying to go through 400 applications on LinkedIn and it's just not working and you're frustrated. And the process of recruitment starts way before you even get that job post out on LinkedIn or whatever job site. It really starts with having open, candid communications with your team or senior leadership about where are we going in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, what does good look like? And then from there, thinking about what kind of people do I want to help us get there, to kind of pepper that path. And then you kind of work backwards. Okay, this is what kind of teams we're going to need, and these are the kinds of levels that we want. But also within that, there are other things we need to consider. So do I need someone as a project manager to fill a gap right now for the next year? Or am I willing to take on maybe a more junior project manager to build them up into that role over the next 2 to 5 years? So is progression something that I'm really thinking about? If progression really does play a big role in how you structure your recruitment. Sometimes you really just need someone to fill a gap, and that's totally fine. I would often recommend hiring people that are often self-employed, more consulting styles. It gives everyone a bit more flexibility. Or am I looking to build someone into this role and make it more senior? That's when you want to think about maybe taking on someone potentially more junior. But then at the same time, you have to also consider, do I have the budget, once again, for things like L&D and progression and mentoring and all the things that person will need to succeed in that role over the next 5 years. So it really starts way, way, way before you put that job out. And then it requires conversations, HR requires conversations between us and the hiring manager. What do you need? What kind of role? What kind of manager are you? What kind of person do you think is going to fit into your team? What is the company culture? And from there, you can then kind of build it. So building an actual recruitment pipeline that starts really, really early and is really wide, I found has been quite successful. I know that we've spoken about this and we can always put a pin in it now and go back to it later. But for me, recruitment and job hunting and figuring that out is very much to me like dating. It's very much a dance. And recruitment also, it goes, from that beginning job post all the way through until that person has passed their probation. You're still in that recruitment phase in the first 3 months of someone starting a new role. Like if I come back to my dating analogy, it's very much making sure that this is a good fit for everyone involved. And I have some girlfriends that joke that they will never introduce boyfriends to the friend group until kind of 3 months in. It's the same thing for new hires. The 3 months, everyone is on their best behavior. You don't hard launch them on social media. You know what I mean? You want to really make sure that the fit is good for everyone involved, because new joiners, when they come in, the company is just as much in probation as that new joiner is. So I think recruitment, in order for it to be taken more seriously and treated with the respect that it deserves, you need to come at it from a much wider position than just let's get a job out, let's hire someone, and let's get them to start 10 days from now kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, for everyone listening, that you'll see a PDF in the show notes with a document that Maxine has produced for you of the key considerations and a breakdown. Do you want to talk us through a little bit this process that you shared with me, that I was like, turn that into a PDF, please?
Well, I'd love to. It came out of inspiration for something that I wrote out for my personal life, actually, when it comes to dating. I was doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, and I was always ending up disappointed with my boyfriends. And so I kind of thought, I'm a very analytical, organized person. You should see my spice cabinet, it's all alphabetical. Um, and I kind of thought, well, what are the things that are really important to me, and what are the things I can live without? So I've divided it into 4 quadrants for hiring for your next job. Let's put my dating life on the back bench here. So I've divided into 4 sections. So the first is, what are my non-negotiables? What are things that I cannot live without? And then next to it are, what are my nice to haves? Followed by, what are my no-goes? So my absolute no thank yous. And then what are the things I can live with? And you can divide it for multiple different subjects. So for example, let's say you're looking for a new role, you're burnt out, and you're thinking, what's next? What's been the cause of my burnout? And how am I going to try and prevent that from happening again? So let's say, for example, let's talk about an office. My non-negotiable would be that my commute is less than an hour. I live in central London. I don't want to spend an hour and a half on the train every day. That's really going to eat into my personal time. What are my nice to haves? Well, it would be lovely if I could walk to the office, but I acknowledge that maybe I'll have to get the tube, and that's okay. What are my no-goes? I cannot hot desk in a busy space. I'm easily distracted. I need to have focus time. So it would be great if my next role, even if we do have a shared space, that I have my own desk, my own space to work in. And then what can I live with? Well, I recognize that if I have a nice office space, that might mean the team requires me in the office maybe 2-3 days a week. That's not as comfy as sitting in my sweatpants on the couch. Maybe the coffee won't be as great, but that's okay, kind of thing. So you can kind of do that quadrant, like kind of, yeah, assessment for different topics. So things like team, culture, what kind of manager you work best with, progression, employee benefits, diversity, learning and development, the industry you want to be in, the product that you're going to sell, travel opportunities. The list is endless. But yeah, it's a great way to kind of figure out what are the really, really important things to you, and recognize some of those triggers that might push you towards feeling burnt out. And then that way you're not making the same, I don't want to say mistakes, making those same choices over and over again, expecting different results.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's great. I think you can also use it for dating if you want.
Yes, you can. You absolutely can. I think my partner would probably agree. I had spoken to him about it, Vicky, after you and I spoke last, and he was like, wait a second, so what are your non-negotiables? And actually it prompted a really good conversation between the two of us. So it was quite nice. But yeah, you can use it for multiple facets in your life.
Yeah, so there you go. Even if you're in a relationship, it's
Yeah.
gonna spark interesting conversation. Yeah, I think the way you just broke it down for me when we spoke, I just thought, for everyone listening, I think you can see with this podcast, I'm always trying to leave you with something actionable, implementable. Like, it's great to learn, but it's even better to do from that learning. So I asked Maxine to whip this up, and she did do for you. And I think it's just a very powerful thing. I think when we are looking for jobs and we are reading into the noise that not a lot of people are hiring and everyone's letting people go, we can end up making, and interestingly enough, I had someone from my past life in finance get in touch with me last week. We had a chat, and she is moved to a job that was not what she thought it was going to be, from a job that was already a letdown. It is now like, should I just do my own thing, or like keep trying? And it's like this kind of framework where it's like there are more options, but you won't see that there's more options until you break down and get very clear on what your non-negotiables are, what your must-haves are, and the nice-to-haves and the things that you'll tolerate. Because otherwise we end up making very extreme decisions of, like, I guess I'll just start my own business. And I will say this to anyone, I love having my own business. I was always going to have my own business, but it's not the answer to like ease. It's not like this is going to be the simple thing. So again, like, you'll do it because you love it, just like hopefully with any job. If you're in that privileged position, which I know is a privilege for many too, but unfortunately, the way that we communicate around hiring and recruitment and joining and all of this stuff is like take what you can get, and then you end up in this cycle of burnout, resignation, burnout, resignation, burnout, resignation. And this resource that Maxine has very kindly shared with you in the PDF, in the notes, is a tool to help you and again ahead of those burnouts, ahead of those resignations. And I even think hiring managers can use them as much as the person going to the job. Like, it's really a tool for anyone. It's very malleable, as you said.
Yeah, and it's like you said, hiring managers can avail of it, but also if you're already in a team and you're not looking for a new job anytime soon, you can share this with your manager. I think if I was a new manager trying to get to grips with a new team, trying to figure out everyone's personalities and how they like to work, if someone, there's so much information, it's almost, it's overwhelming when you first start a new job. It doesn't matter the level. If someone came to me and said, "Hi, I'm your new coordinator. I'd love to share with you what my non-negotiables are for my working style," I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's made my life easier. And then I can help you from day one. If I already know that someone's a morning person and they prefer to do all their meetings in the morning, I'll be way more conscious not to book meetings with them in the afternoon. I'll be way more conscious. Someone says to me, I have an hour every day where I go and I pick up my kid from daycare. If I already know those things about someone, it allows me to once again like be super malleable and flexible about how our team works and what the expectations are. What managers aren't is mind readers, right? And so
They're not.
they're really not, as much as I'd love to be. That they're really
Like partners also are mind
exactly
readers,
exactly. If you don't share what's going on and what you need from someone else, you can't be frustrated when they don't get it, whilst recognizing that sharing is oftentimes very, very scary and takes an immense amount of courage. And people are not inclined to share if they feel like their manager's going to snap at them, or that there will be repercussions for things like, leaving the office for an hour to pick up your kid, right? So it is a fine balance, but I think having these kind of tools for success in your toolbox, I mean, really set everyone up, to win here. And yeah, it's also, yeah, it's just makes people's lives easier, and it sets expectations from the get-go. I wish earlier in my career that had been more firm with kind of what I needed to do my job to the best of my ability, instead of saying yes to everything. I was such a yes man, yes woman, I suppose. I was just so happy to take anything on because I thought, you're at the beginning of your career. It's really important that you say yes to everything because people will think you're not working very hard if you don't. And then suddenly I became this person that everybody thought would just happily take things on. And I actually became known, it acted as a disservice to me as I became more senior. People would just think, oh, well, nobody's immediately put their hand up for this project. Max will say yes, like Max will do it. She says yes to everything. And suddenly I was spinning all these plates. And of course I dropped one. And then everyone thought, wow, Max actually can't do that. That was such a simple task and she couldn't handle it. Something's wrong with Max, right? And it wasn't seen as something's wrong with Max. She's probably burnt out. We should help her. It was, wow, she really can't handle, multiple deadlines. So maybe that'll affect her at her, performance review, when it wasn't the case at all. I just couldn't juggle everything. See how
Yeah.
it's come full circle. Yeah.
Full circle, and so relatable to so many people listening, I know, and to so many
Right.
conversations we have. So thank you for sharing that.
No problem. Happy to.
Amazing. So listen, you can connect with Max on LinkedIn. The link will be in the show notes. You can also connect with me. The link will be in the show notes. You can also submit yourself or someone else to come on the podcast as an expert. The link will be in the show notes. And of course, the PDF will be there. Max, is there any final message you want to leave the listeners with on today's episode?
Great question. I think, like we've said multiple times, I'll say it one more time. Burnout is all about recognizing the signs before it gets there. It's all about preventative as opposed to reactive actions. So honestly, the sooner that you can recognize those signs within yourself, within your team members, the better. And it'll just give you a lot more time and a lot more flexibility with how you handle it. And like you said, I'm always available to chat. I'm always happy to talk about my own personal experiences. So yeah, please feel free to reach out.
Yes, of course. And actually, I think I will link, I've got another podcast for those of you that don't know, and I share my burnout story. So I will link that there if you want to read that too. Listen, read. There you go. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, Max. This has been a great episode. We'll see you all soon.
Thank you.